we're studying nervous system. We stop here. So from today, we're going to study central nervous system, peripheral nervous system. Remember CNS, central nervous system, basically consists of brain and spinal cord. Yes, this is from last week. Don't forget to sign the attendance for those of you who do not swallow, okay? So basically, brain and spinal cord. This system is way much more complicated than what we are going to cover in this course. But I want you to take in the main functions, okay? How is it divided? What is the main function? That is the most important thing from all these. So the central nervous system consists of the brain and the spinal cord. But the brain has 4 different regions. Okay, you have seen many pictures from the brain before. You have the brain, several hemispheres, 2 sides, left and right, the encephalon, the brainstem, and the cerebellum. Okay, we will go each by one by one. So first, we see the cerebral hemispheres or the cerebrum. You have the left side and the right side. Okay. Here is where most of the superior parts of the brain are. If you have noticed from pictures of the brain, the surface is not smooth, it's not regular, right? Has these convolutions or ridges. It's like going this way. Convolution. These convolutions are called gyri. Okay, are all these are the gyri, the convolutions. And it also has these groups. Here comes the convolution, and it has these groups. Some of them are shallow, so not too deep, and others are deeper. The shallow groups are known as sulci. Okay? And the deep ones are known as fissures. Okay? These will separate imaginarily, will separate different areas in the cerebrum, in the brain. Okay? Actually, if you open up and you see with your own eyes, you will obviously not see it by color, and will not be this easy to differentiate one area from another. But to know which area we're talking about or which area we are trying to focus on, we can use the sulci and the fissures. Okay, these are like landmarks in the surface of brain. These fissures or sulci, the grooves, divide the hemisphere into different lobes. You may have heard of frontal lobe, parietal lobes, occipital lobe, and temporal lobe. Okay, you can see here in color. This is the frontal, parietal, occipital, temporal. And there are some basic regions that we have seen before: the gray matter, the white matter, and the basal nuclei, which is also gray matter, within the white matter. Do you remember why it's gray and white matter?
It's a bit darker.
It's darker, yes. If you see it with your eyes, it's darker, and the other one is lighter in color. But what makes it whiter or darker? Do you remember? No? This is a very basic question. Okay, so try to not forget about it. The gray matter will have the cell bodies of the neurons. Okay, and the white matter is the myelinated axons of the neurons. These are the tracks. So remember that. And there are some areas in the hemispheres that we can identify. and they will be associated or related to different functions in the body. One of them is the primary somatic sensory area. It's in the parietal lobe. Okay? This is the sensory. It's posterior to the central sulcus. Remember, the sulcus is the shallow groove. Okay? We have the central sulcus here. This sulcus will be dividing the frontal lobe from the parietal lobe. Okay? And the area posterior to the central sulcus, so if this is the sulcus, this area is the somatic sensory area, primary somatic sensory. And what are the functions of this area? What does it do? It recognizes pain, coldness, or light touch. Okay, so this area will receive and will interpret information from our receptors, the sensory receptors that are in our body. So all information, tactile touch information, will be receiving it here. And we have another area called primary motor area. Okay? And this is in the frontal lobe, anterior to the central sulcus. Remember, the central sulcus is here. It divides the frontal and the parietal. Here was the somatic sensory. This is the primary motor. Okay? So anterior to the sulcus. And this area will send an impulse to the motor, to the skeletal muscles, saying what kind of movement will be conducted or will be performed. So information you receive from your receptors on one side of your body will come across and will be received in the opposite side of your hemisphere. Okay, so whatever I touch with my left hand will be received in my right side. And same if I sense with my right hand, it will be received in my left side. Okay, that is why it says pathways are crossed. The same in the sensory, somatic, in the sensory area. Sensory pathways are crossed because information will go from one side to the other side of here. I don't know if you have ever seen this homunculus map. This is a way of representing what areas in our brain will receive or will send information regarding certain body areas. Okay. This is a map for the sensory area, the map of the motor. So we call it motor homunculus, or in this area sensory homunculus, depending on which pathway we are referring to. And what do you see here? What is strange? We have cut our brain like this. We have cut the brain like this. Okay. The red part is referring to the motor area, and the blue one to the sensor. But if you see here, there are pictures. Pictures of, here's your tongue, here's a lip, face, neck, brow, fingers, hand, and so on, up to your toes. Okay? But it's quite distorted, right? There are big areas covering, for example, lips, face, hand, but very smaller areas covering, for example, your lower extremities. Why do you think it's this? Remember, these are areas receiving or sending information about these parts of your body. Any ideas? So different parts of your body have receptors, right? But the amount of receptors you have is not the same. So the amount of receptors I have, for example, in my hand or in my tongue is very different than the amount of receptors I may have for my shoulder or for my knees. Okay? And this represents how the amount of receptors that I have for each of these areas. So you have more areas covering tongue or face or hands than covering shoulder or your lower extremities. So the amount of the cortex, the surface, dedicated to each part reflects the density of the receptors that you have in that area. There are specific areas in the brain dedicated to specific functions. We're not going to go over the details of these. For example, you have an area here called Broca's area. This is motor speech. It's involved in your ability to speak. Okay? It's at the base of the precentral gyrus. You have it only in one hemisphere. Usually it's the left side. Okay? You have this area called Broca area, and it's related to speech. What happens when you damage this area? If you damage this area, probably you know what you want to say, but you cannot actually speak. You may not be able to speak and say what you are thinking. So specific damage in specific areas will cause very specific damages related to the function that is performed in this area. Okay? And there are other specialized areas, just for you to have a general idea. You have an area specialized in smelling, olfactory area, language comprehension in the frontal part. We mentioned the motor speech, Broca, here. Visual area, the occipital lobe, and so on. We mentioned these. We have cerebral white matter. If we cut like this our brain, we can see this representation. Okay, the gray matter, the white matter, and the basal ganglia. This is also gray matter. Okay, but we call it basal ganglia. This is a cluster of the cell bodies. So in the white matter, we have the fibers carrying impulses and carrying information. Okay, it could be from one hemisphere to the other one. It could be from your receptors towards your cortex, and so on. Okay, if you see a picture like this is actually representing, these are the pathways or the tracts, okay, of the nerves carrying information. Information from one hemisphere to the other, information from your receptors here to your cortex, and so on. This is in the macro anatomy. We mentioned the basal ganglia are these structures here, which is also gray matter. The basal ganglia are like islands within all this white matter in the brain. This is gray matter within the white matter of the hemisphere. And they regulate motor activity, voluntary motor activity. Modifying information sent to the primary motor cortex. Okay, we just saw that, primary motor cortex. So that is a very, very simplifying view of the hemispheres. Another part of the brain is the diencephalon. This is covered by the two hemispheres. Okay, so from the outside, you may not be able to see it. And the diencephalon, this part, is on top of the brainstem, and it's enclosed. It's closed by both hemispheres. It has these three major structures. Okay, thalamus, hypothalamus, epithalamus. Okay, thalamus, hypothalamus, epithalamus. What does each of these structures do? First, the thalamus. The thalamus is actually like a pit stop, a relay station, okay, for sensory impulses passing to the sensory cortex. So information is coming through, stops in the thalamus, and continues to the sensory cortex. It will transfer impulses to the correct part of the cortex, okay, for interpretation and localization. What means hypothalamus? Remember, hypo is below or under, so it's under the thalamus. Okay, if this is the thalamus, here is the hypothalamus. And this is a very important structure involved in regulation of the body temperature. Body temperature, it will control the balance of the water in your body. It will regulate the metabolism, hypothalamus. We will see a little bit about these when we touch on the endocrine system. It's an important part of the limbic system, so it's related with emotions. And it regulates another endocrine organ called pituitary gland. We haven't studied yet pituitary gland. And the epithalamus actually houses pineal body and endocrine gland, and includes the chorial plexus. The chorial plexus produces the cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, we will see what is the cerebrospinal fluid in a few minutes. Next part of the brain is the brainstem. Okay, remember the brain is the two cerebral hemisphere, diencephalon with the three structures, brainstem. The brainstem is this structure, the green part, and it's also composed of midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. This is the midbrain, pons, and the medulla oblongata. Okay. And it provides a pathway for ascending and descending tracks. These refers to the axons bringing or sending information, okay, to or from the cortex. So first, let's see, remember brainstem, we have midbrain, pons, medulla oblongata. The midbrain. The midbrain is a relatively small part, mostly composed of trapped nerve fibers. And it's the reflex center involving vision and hearing. Okay, so this is an important thing involving vision and hearing. The pons, this rounded structure here, the pons protrudes just below the midbrain. Mostly composed of fiber tracts and includes nuclei involving control of breathing. Okay. All this is important to know because again, damages to this structure will be involved in lack of performance of these functions. Okay. And the medulla oblongata is the most inferior part. This one. The medulla oblongata will merge into the spinal cord. So we'll continue with the spinal cord. It also contains fiber tracts. This is the area where the tracts will cross over to the opposite side. Okay? And it contains important nuclei. Remember, we have a slide with the terminology. Okay, so nuclei in this case will be the cluster of the cell bodies of the nerves. Okay, and it contains important nuclei related to control of heart rate, blood pressure, breathing, swallowing, or vomiting. Okay, so now the last part of the brain is the cerebellum. Okay, this smaller part here, it's in red in our figure. The cerebellum projects dorsally from under the occipital lobe. Is this structure? If this is the occipital lobe, this is the cerebellum. And the cerebellum also has two hemispheres. Okay, and like the brain, has a convoluted surface. It also has gray matter and white matter. But what is important about the cerebellum is that it controls your balance and your equilibrium. Okay. Because of the cerebellum, your movements are smooth and coordinated. This is just for you to see it in total. Your hemispheres, your brainstem, your cerebellum. Now, if the central nervous system is involved in higher functions, important functions to your body, you need a system to protect it, right? A very obvious one would be the bones of your head, your skull, correct? The skull, the skin in your skull. The vertebral column, meaning the bones in your spinal, in your column. But you also have these other structures, the meninges, cerebrospinal fluid, and the blood-brain barrier. All of them to protect the central nervous system. What is the meninges? This is actually three membranes. Okay, these are three membranes that will line the skull and the vertebral canal, and will enclose the brain and the spinal cord. So imagine you have your brain and your spinal cord, and it's completely protected by these layers. Okay. You have these three types: dura mater, arachnoid mater, and pia mater. But the three of them together are called meninges. We have seen periosteum when you were reading about the skeletal system. This is a layer attached to the surface of the bone. You have also the arachnoid matter in the middle, and the pia mater, which is the most internal layer. Okay, if you see a picture of this, think of this will be your hair, your skin, this is the bone, okay? And this is the three layers, meninges. Dura, arachnoid, and pia, okay? And there is this space here between the arachnoid, here put it, subarachnoid space, is the space between the pia matter and the arachnoid matter, okay? And we will mention this space in a minute. So what is the cerebrospinal fluid? This is, as the name says, a fluid, and its composition is similar to the blood plasma, to the liquid part of the blood. It's continually formed by the choroid plexus, and it actually offers a cushion, okay, a watery cushion to protect the brain. And it's continually circulating in the arachnoid space. It goes through the arachnoid space, the ventricles, and the central canal of the spinal cord. What are these ventricles? The ventricles, we have, this is hollow, like cavities. Okay. And this fluid is going to circulate through these ventricles. We have the lateral ventricles, the third ventricle in the middle, and the fourth ventricle. Okay. I think in your handout you only have this picture, but I include this one also so that you have a better idea of how it looks. The ventricles, you cannot actually see them from the outside in the macro anatomy. Okay. This is how the CSF circulates. It will be produced in the choroid plexus, the ventricle. There are different choroid plexus in different areas in the ventricle. It will be produced there. It will flow through the ventricles and into the subarachnoid space. Some will go through the central canal of the spinal cord. So some will go this way. Others will go this way. Okay? It will flow through the subarachnoid space and it will be absorbed into the dural venous sinuses. It will be reabsorbed here. And you're constantly producing and reabsorbing it. Okay? So it's not a static fluid. Another way of protecting your brain is called the blood-brain barrier. These are actually endothelial cells that are lining the brain capillaries. And these will protect the tissue, the neural tissue, from variations in the composition of your blood or other harmful toxins. These will protect you from these harmful substances to go into your brain, to pass into your brain. It will exclude many potential harmful substances. Blood-brain barrier is permeable, meaning that it will let through water, oxygen, CO2, glucose, and some amino acids, fat molecules, and gases. And will also let through alcohol, nicotine, and some anesthetics. Otherwise, you may not have surgery. But then this also explains why if you take a lot of alcohol, you start having different sensations. It will affect your brain. But it's impermeable, meaning that it will not let through substances like urea or toxins or some drugs. So again, the CNS, the central nervous system, consists of the brain and the spinal cord. We've seen the cerebral hemispheres, left and right. The encephalon is enclosed with these hemispheres, the brainstem, and the cerebellum. Okay? Now let's see about the spinal cord. Remember, the spinal cord is a continuation of the brainstem. We mentioned the spinal cord is also cushioned and protected by the meningeal coverings. These three layers protecting the brain, they're also covering the spinal cord. The spinal cord will extend from the occipital bone, okay, to L1, L2. If you read the handouts from the skeletal system, L stands for lumbar, okay? So this means that the spinal cord does not reach the end of the vertebral column. So you have your vertebral column, but you don't actually have spinal cord up to the end of the spinal cord. You have 31 pairs of spinal nerves arising from the cord, and they will exit from the vertebral column to serve the body area that is close to that exit. There are some enlargements at different levels, at different regions, like the cervical region and the lumbar region. And at the end, you have all the nerves here, called the cauda equina. This is the group, the collection of the spinal nerves at the end, at the inferior end of the vertebral canal. Okay, here you can see a picture of the spinal cord. This would be white matter, gray matter, meaning the cell bodies. Okay, and these are the nerves arising from the spinal cord. In the spinal cord, we have the gray matter. Whenever you see a picture, it's like a butterfly, right? Looks like a butterfly or like a letter H. It will slightly change according to the region, but in general, it looks like an H or a butterfly. As we say, it's mostly composed of the cell bodies. You have a posterior horn, an anterior horn. These are different neurons. And in the center, you have a canal through which is flowing the cerebrospinal fluid. And in the white matter, you have the myelinated fibers. Okay? And you can actually divide these in three areas. The dorsal column, which are the ascending, going up, going to the cortex, the ascending tracts, carrying sensory input to the brain. So from the receptors, carrying sensory input to the cortex. The lateral column, which has tracts ascending and descending. Okay? And the ventral column, which also carries ascending and descending tracts. Just keep here one. So we have the peripheral nervous system. This is not the brain and the spinal cord, remember? And this consists of the nerves and the ganglia outside the central nervous system. Okay? And the nerve that you see, or whenever you mention a nerve, is actually a bundle, a group, a collection of the fibers that are outside your central nervous system. Okay. The nerve is a bundle of neuron fibers. The neuron fibers are bound by connective tissue. And they can be mixed nerves, meaning that they carry fibers that process sensory information and motor information. They could be afferent nerves. Afferent, remember, is carrying information towards the central nervous system. So it's sensory information, sensory nerves. Or efferent nerves, which are also motor nerves, and will carry the impulses away from the central nervous system. How is the structure of a nerve? Okay. This is a bundle of fibers. Okay. Each neuron fiber is surrounded by an endoneuron, a connective tissue. And the group of fibers are bound into fascicles by a perineuron. Okay. This is the epineuron, perineuron, and each one of them endoneuron. And the fascicles are bound by that epineuron to form a nerve. This is all connective tissue, okay? Dividing it by different groups. You don't need to remember all these, but just for your information, there are 12 pairs of cranial nerves. We call these cranial nerves. These are nerves arising near your brain. They have different names or sometimes called by their numbers. and each of them arising from specific side will be related to specific function. Okay, so you have nerves involved in your audition, how you can listen sound. Others may be involved maybe in what else? Smelling. Okay. And this is the list of the cranial nerves. And if they carry only information, motor information, sensory information, or mixed information, sensory and motor, and what kind of the major function they are involved in. Okay, these were the cranial nerves. In the spinal nerves, we mentioned there are 31 pairs of spinal nerves. We will classify them according to at what level they are arising from. If they are cervical, the cervical region, thoracic, if they are arising in the thoracic region, lumbar. And there is a pair of spinal nerves at the level of each vertebra. Okay. You can see with much more detail this at home. Okay. So that we can move on to the next part. We see this figure at the beginning of the class last week when we were studying how the nervous system is organized. You remember these? We mentioned the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Information carrying sensory information and motor information, right? And the motor information we can divide it in the somatic or the autonomic system. So let's see now the autonomic nervous system. It's here, okay? And this is involuntary. The autonomic nervous system is the involuntary branch, the involuntary section of our nervous system. Okay? And it consists of only motor nerves, nerves carrying motor information. And it has two divisions. It could be sympathetic or parasympathetic. You may have probably heard about these. Regulates functions like your heart, muscles, smooth muscles in your organs, either blood vessels or other organs, glands, for example. And usually sympathetic and parasympathetic system may have opposite effects. While one may raise your heart rate, the other one will decrease it. Okay, this is a figure of the somatic and autonomic nervous system and the types of neurons involved in each one of them. Okay, there are some differences between the somatic and the autonomic nervous system. This is the autonomic nervous system with the sympathetic division and the parasympathetic division. Okay, each of these innervating or reaching different organs. A little too much detail, maybe. The sympathetic division, also called thoracolumbar division. Okay, let's keep this. Okay, the sympathetic division is often called the fight or flight system. Okay, it's the division involved in the response to some stimulus, quickly, unusual stimulus. And its activity is evident when we are excited or in an emergency or when we feel threatened. Okay, that is why it's called fight or flight. For example, this is a system that will increase your heart rate. If suddenly we hear a very loud noise, your heart starts increase the heart rate, right? Starts going very, very fast. This is due to your sympathetic division. your blood pressure may rise, and so on. And the opposite effect will be brought by the parasympathetic division, which is also called the resting and digestion. This is more to bring down all the effects from the sympathetic division. Okay, and this is most active when your body is at rest, when you are calm. It conserves the energy of your body, and it maintains the daily functions of your body. Okay. Okay, this is nice from last week. Okay, this is the main things that you should remember from the nervous system. Any questions here? There's a lot of memory and detail for the nervous system, okay? But I would like you to remember the main ideas, the main functions of the system and how it's divided. Okay, that is the main points that you should focus on. So we will continue with the endocrine system. I'm giving that we have enough time. I tried to simplify this a lot from last year so that we have enough time to cover blood in the next section. So what kind of idea do you have from the endocrine system? This is slightly related to the nervous system. Remember when we say the nervous system will have a faster response, while the endocrine system, through the hormones, will have a slower response, right? But what is the endocrine system? This is actually a collection of glands that will produce and will release hormones that will regulate processes, important processes like the growth and development, metabolism, reproduction, and the body defense. Okay. But so far, what have we seen also from these systems? If you see the skeletal system, everything is connected, right? All the bones are connected. We just saw the nervous system. Also, all the organs, all its parts are connected one to the other. But the endocrine system is slightly different in that way. We mentioned the endocrine system interacts with the nervous system. It influences some activities, metabolic activities, through hormones that are transported in the blood. And the response occurs more slowly, but tend to last longer than the ones from the nervous system. Okay. And I mentioned you that the organs in the endocrine system, they are not connected like the skeletal system or the nervous system. If we see the major endocrine organs are these ones. And they are not really connected like the nervous system, for example, or the skeletal system. They are scattered. They are all over our body. We have some pure endocrine organs, meaning that all the cells that are forming these organs are endocrine cells. And we have other organs that contain endocrine cells. Okay? What are hormones? We have heard a lot about hormones. Right? Maybe especially when we talk about puberty, we listen about hormones. Hormones are these substances, chemical substances, that are produced, that are secreted, not necessarily produced, but are secreted by endocrine cells into the extracellular fluid, and they regulate the metabolic activity of other cells. We have different types of hormones, depending on the structure. We can have amino acid-based hormones, steroids, prostaglandins. But the basic action, they do it circulating through the blood vessels throughout our body. And even though they circulate throughout our body, they only influence the target cell. The target cell is the cell where they are going. Okay? And they can have different effects on different target cells. So the target cells will have some receptors, right? So that the hormones know where to go. They're very specific. What are some of the effects caused by the hormones? They will produce changes in the plasma membrane permeability, what the plasma membrane would let go through, or the electrical state. They will be involved in the synthesis of proteins, or activation or inactivation of enzymes. They can also stimulate mitosis or promotion of some secretory activity. So they have different effects. How they do this? The endocrine organ will be activated by the stimuli, right? And these stimuli could be of different types, okay? 3 different types of stimuli. One is called humoral stimuli. This humoral stimuli is in response to the change of the ions or the levels of nutrients that we have in the blood. These are some examples. We will see a little more in detail later. The other type of stimuli could be neural stimuli. If the fibers stimulate the organ, they will release hormones. And the third type of stimuli is another hormone. And this is the most common type of stimuli. This stimuli is received from other glands through other hormones. And certain hormones will signal secretion of other hormones. Okay? And this is the most common type of stimuli. But all these is always controlled by the feedback loops. Okay? We go again to our figure from homeostasis. Okay? So the blood concentration, if it declines below a minimum, then more hormone will be secreted so that we raise the level. But if the blood concentration exceeds the maximum, then the hormone production will be stopped. Okay. So we don't have that much time. We will only touch on the main functions of each of the glands. Okay? These are the major endocrine organs: the pituitary gland, the hypothalamus, the thyroid gland, parathyroid glands, adrenal glands, pancreatic islets. These are cells in the pancreas. The pineal gland, the thymus, the glands. There are many, okay? And they are all in different places. How do they connect within each other? How they communicate with the hormones? So let's see first the pituitary gland, also called hypophysis. Very curious name. This is attached to the hypothalamus. We just learned about the hypothalamus, right? Here is the hypothalamus. If this is the brain, this is the hypothalamus. Here is the pituitary gland, small body here. And it's connected with the hypothalamus. It will secrete 9 major hormones. And it will have 2 functional lobes. So it's separated into 2 structures. Okay? One is the anterior pituitary. This is the anterior pituitary. and this is the posterior. The anterior pituitary is also called adenohypophysis, and the posterior pituitary is called neurohypophysis. This is the anterior, the violet, and this is the posterior. I tried to put the main information here so that you can compare both sections. Okay, the anterior, the adenohypophysis, is made up of glandular tissue. Okay, it will regulate the activity of other endocrine glands, and it's regulated by hormonal stimuli. Okay, but the posterior lobe, the posterior part, is called a neurohypophysis. And this part is actually neural tissue. This is a continuation from the hypothalamus. This is neural tissue. And it has a neural connection. It's connected with the hypothalamus. The hormones are actually transported and contained here. It is not a true gland because it doesn't have glandular tissue like the anterior lobe, but it stores and communicates. So it's considered part of the endocrine system and the pituitary gland. We mentioned they produce this number of hormones. The anterior pituitary, or the anterior lobe, produces all these hormones: growth hormones, prolactin, adrenocorticotropic hormone, ACTH, thyroid stimulating hormone, melanocyte stimulating hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, and luteinizing hormone. And the posterior lobe produces ADH, or antidiuretic hormone, and oxytocin. What are the main action of these hormones? This is a small list of them. I try to put them all together so that it may try to be easier perhaps for you to memorize or to have an idea. Some of the names can give away the function. Of course, growth hormones will be related to growth. Growth of skeletal muscles, stimulate cells in growing in size and division. Prolactin, this is the hormone that will be involved in stimulating and maintaining milk production. So this is a hormone that starts being produced after childbirth, correct? ACTH will regulate the activity of the adrenal cortex. We'll see in a minute about adrenal cortex. TSH influences growth and activity of thyroid gland. MSH, melanocyte stimulating hormone, will regulate the function of the melanocytes. FSH, this is involved in development of follicles in the ovaries for women, but also in men for sperms in the testes. LH will trigger ovulation in women and will cause the follicle to produce progesterone and some estrogen. And in men, it will stimulate production of testosterone. So all of them have different functions, some of them related to their names, so it may be a little bit easier to remember. And these were hormones from the anterior lobe, okay, the adenohypophysis. The other two hormones produced or secreted by the posterior lobe in the neurohypophysis are the ADH, or antidiuretic hormone, and oxytocin. These hormones are stored here that they are released in response to nerve impulses. Remember, this is continuation from the hypothalamus, and it has nerve tissue. What are they involved in, these two hormones? Oxytocin, this is released during childbirth and when women are nursing. Okay, when the baby is about to be born, oxytocin is very important hormone. It will stimulate the contractions of the muscles in the uterus, so it will be pushing the baby so that it's born. And it will cause the ejection of milk when women are breastfeeding. And ADH, this is involved in the production of urine, okay? And also constriction of the small arteries to control the blood pressure, ADH. Okay, I want to go maybe a little bit slowly on this because there are many glands and it will be very tiring and boring. So the next one is the thyroid gland. This is in the anterior part of your neck, and it has these two lateral lobes. It looks like an inch or here. This is your gland, the thyroid gland, and it's the largest pure endocrine gland, meaning that all the cells forming this gland are endocrine cells. It's composed of follicle, and it's not important. It produces two hormones, okay? TH, or thyroid hormone, and calcitonin. Okay, these are the two main hormones. What do they do? TH will be involved in oxidation of glucose to be converted into heat so that you can regulate your temperature. It will increase your metabolic rate. And it also regulates growth of tissue and development, especially for reproductive system and nervous system. And the other hormone, calcitonin, it will decrease the calcium in your blood by causing depositation of calcium in your bones. Okay? You must have read this when you were reading the handles of skeletal system. Okay, the other glands are very small glands called parathyroid glands. Okay. These are tiny glands that are in the posterior side of your thyroid. Okay, if this is the posterior view. This is the posterior part of your thyroid gland. These are the parathyroid glands, very tiny structures. And they contain two types of cells, of endocrine cells. One is the Chi cells, the other one is the oxyphil cells. Their cells are involved in producing PTH, parathyroid hormone, and increase the concentration of calcium in blood. Okay, this is the main function. This is the most important regulator of calcium ions. We mentioned they stimulate destruction of bone through the osteoclast, a type of cell, to break down the bone matrix and release the calcium into blood. So if in the blood I have low levels of calcium, this hormone will be in charge of taking the calcium from my bones so that the blood level will raise. So the major target then for these hormone is where the calcium is. And where is the calcium? In the bones. So the skeleton is a major target of this hormone. This hormone also stimulates kidneys and intestines so that they will absorb more calcium. Okay, next one is the adrenal glands. Okay, are these kind of like the hat over the kidneys, like a triangle. The adrenal glands, you have two. It's a pair, pyramid shapes, like pyramid, in the superior surface of the kidneys. Okay, I have another picture here. You have here the kidneys. These are your adrenal glands. Structurally and functionally, they are actually two glands. Okay, we can identify here the cortex and the medulla. The cortex has glandular tissue, while the medulla has nervous tissue. The adrenal cortex and the medulla. Cortex, medulla. Okay? In the cortex will synthesize and release hormones, corticosteroids. The cortex will have these three areas. Okay, if you go back to this other picture, this is the one you have in your handles. You can see the three areas. If this is the medulla, this is the cortex. You have these three areas. From the outer side to the inner side, you have the glomerulosa, fasciculata, and reticularis. Each of these areas will produce hormones, different types of hormones. The glomerulosa, mineralocorticoids, fasciculata, the glucocorticoids, and the reticularis, the sex hormones. Okay? Mainly these hormones, aldosterone, cortisol, and androgens. What do they do? Each of them? The mineralocorticoids, they will regulate concentrations of electrolytes in the extracellular fluid, meaning more in the inside of the cells. Okay? Mostly they produce aldosterone. Aldosterone will maintain the balance of sodium, reducing the excretion of sodium from the body. So it will maintain your sodium levels. And will stimulate reabsorption by the kidneys. Okay, so it's involved in sodium balance. While glucocorticoids that were produced in the second area, the fasciculata area, they will help the body resist stress by keeping the levels of blood sugar relatively constant and maintaining the blood volume and preventing water into the tissue. The main hormone that was produced here is cortisol. Cortisol is involved in formation of glucose and rising the level of glucose. The third area mainly produce sex hormones, right? These are also called gonadocorticoids. Maybe it's easier to remember sex hormones. Most of them are androgens, meaning male sex hormones. And the most important one is testosterone. Okay, so testosterone is produced here. What do androgens, these sex hormones, are involved in? Onset of puberty, meaning when your secondary sex characteristics are starting to develop. Sex drive in females. And androgens can be converted into estrogens after menopause. Do you remember what would be secondary sex characteristics? The primary ones are the ones directly related. How we say this is a man, this is a woman, or this is a boy, this is a girl. So the penis and the vagina would be the primary. But the secondary sex characteristics are the ones that start developing when we start reaching teenage puberty, right? For example, pubic hair, development of breasts, the change in your voice, what they call the Adam's apple. These are types of secondary sex characteristics. And then the pancreas. Pancreas is behind the stomach, okay? And it's a mixed gland. We mentioned at the beginning, we didn't mention pancreas when we had the list of our glands. We're only referring to the cells, pancreatic islets. This is a mixed gland containing endocrine and exocrine cells, okay? The exocrine cells are those cells secreting enzymes, digestive enzymes. So remember here what was the difference between exocrine and endocrine. Okay? Exocrine is to the outside, so they are secreting digestive enzymes. This is in the stomach. Endocrine cells, we're referring to the pancreatic islets. And we have two major cells here. Our alpha and beta cells producing insulin and glucagon. These two hormones will be released into the blood. Here's a little more detail on each of the cells. One will secrete glucagon, the other one will secrete insulin. Both of them are involved in maintaining a normal range in your blood sugar. Okay, one will lower, the other one will raise it. You can see later with much more detail with time this figure. But both are involved in regulation of blood glucose levels, while insulin will lower the blood glucose level. Why? How? It will enhance the transport of glucose into the body cells. It will make the cells to use more glucose. But glucagon will raise the level of your blood glucose, and its major target is the liver. In the liver, glucagon will promote glucogenolysis, which is breaking down the glycogen to produce glucose. Gluconeogenesis, the synthesis of glucose from other substances like lactic acid or non-carbohydrates. And it will release this glucose to the blood. Okay? And the last one, this is the last one, pineal gland. This is a very small gland here, hanging from the roof of the third ventricle. Remember, we have the lateral ventricle, the third ventricle, the fourth ventricle. And the pineal gland will produce melatonin. Okay? What is the function of melatonin? Melatonin is involved in how you know it's day and night, your wake and sleep cycles, day-night cycles, and the physiological processes that will show rhythmic variations. Your temperature, your sleep, or your appetite. Do not confuse melatonin with melanin, okay? Remember, melanin is produced by, go ahead.
Melanocyte.
Melanocytes, yes. And if this is involved in day-night cycles, the other one, melanin, is for skin pigment. Yeah, so very different. Don't confuse the names, okay? Okay, a little more. The thymus. Here is the thymus, in the center of your chest. The thymus is a lobulated gland deep in your sternum, in the thorax. Remember the sternum? What was the sternum? is one of the bones of your rib cage, okay? And it's a flat bone, remember. Okay, so it's located deep to the sternum, and it produces a hormone called thymosin. What is important in the thymus is that it's related to the immune system, okay? It will be involved in the development of T cells or T lymphocytes, which are a type of white blood cells, okay? We'll study about the blood cells in the next class. But this is why the thymus is important. And we mentioned very quickly ovary and testes. These are main sources of sex hormones, also called gonads. Okay. In the female, we have 2 ovaries in the abdominal pelvic cavity. Remember the cavities? And the ovaries produce estrogens and progesterone. They are responsible for maturation of reproductive organs, the appearance of secondary sexual characteristics, which in women would be pubic hair, enlargement of breasts, sex preference. And the cyclic changes in the uterine mucosa, this is related to menstruation. In the males, testes are in the extra-abdominal sac, also called the scrotum, and the testes will produce testosterone. The testosterone is involved in initiation of maturation of reproductive organs, and it will cause the appearance of the secondary sexual characteristics in the sex drive. In men, it will be the change in your voice, the Adam's apple, pubic hair, and so on. And this hormone is necessary for production of sperm. Okay? There are other structures that produce hormones, but they are not as important as the previous ones that we have reviewed. Okay? The heart, for example, will produce AMP, atrioneuric peptide. Gastrointestinal tract will also release some digestive hormones. Placenta, which is a temporary organ in women, will release hormones that will influence the course of pregnancy, will maintain or not the pregnancy. Kidneys, for example, they also secrete erythropoietin to produce red blood cells. We may mention this next class. Skin will produce cholecalciferol, which is early stages of producing vitamin D. Adipose tissue, which is fat tissue, okay, can release leptin, involved in when you're feeling satisfied, when you're not feeling hungry. And that's the end of this class. I want you to remember, I have asked you many times, what are the 2 important differences between endocrine and exocrine glands? Okay? This is a very basic difference between both of them. Okay. I've tried to simplify as much as possible all these parts. So not to make it too boring or too long. Okay? There are many new words, new things maybe that you have to read from these. Okay, so if everything's okay, comments or questions? No? Are you okay with the assignments? Is everything going okay? Especially for those who are doing the first ones, meaning you.
I already started it.
Everything okay?
I think yes.
Okay. Remember, you're not allowed to include videos. Videos help a lot, but unfortunately, for you, you have to mention everything. Okay? What else? You don't need to look for a lot of books, I think. If you choose one that it combines anatomy, physiology, anatomy will be very simplified if you have to talk about anatomy or physiology. Okay? You can always, because in your case you're only talking anatomy, you can go obviously to very big books. They have very nice pictures too. What else? Nothing else, I think. If everything is okay, then I'll see you next time. We will cover blood cells for next class. Okay? Try to read again your handouts. If you have any questions about the quiz, no? Remember, you can eliminate that grade. Okay, so you still can have 100 next quiz. And usually it will be like this, very simple, 4 questions, not too long, usually based on what we have covered in class. Okay? So, questions? No? Everything okay?
For the source, I mean, for the presentation, do I have to take it from books solely, or can I mix like internet and books?
You can mix, because from books it's very difficult to obtain the images.
Yeah.
Yes. Because this is only for the class, and we are not making it public. You can put at the end of your presentation the links for the website you took the figures, right? Because it's very difficult. Otherwise, we need to pay for copyright, and that can be very troublesome. But there are very nice pictures online. You can use them instead of maybe scanning the books, or sometimes also the books have online material.
Yeah, right.
Yes, you can try to use that. Anything else? No. I will check yours later and give you some feedback.
Thank you.
Anything else? No? Okay. Wake up. You can go home. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time.